Welcome to ZKast, everyone. I'm ZS Caraval from ZK Research, and I'm joined today by Josh Barney, CEO of SEAT, the SEAT conference coming up in Nashville from June 29th to July 1st, I believe it is, right?
That's absolutely correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so, Josh, why don't we just start with what is the SEAT conference? Who's attending, and what are the attendees get out of it?
Yeah. Seat conference itself is a conference that we are now in, I believe, the 17th iteration of this. It started back in 2006 as kind of a user group for CIOs in the NHL. And that's where it really kind of started from, was a conversation around technology there. And it's now kind of blossomed into this conversation around technology in the whole for the sports and entertainment industry. And that's where the name really comes from. SEAT is an acronym, which is Sports and Entertainment Alliance in Technology. So at its heart, it's a technology conference. And what we try and do in this is make the conversation easy for these folks in the teams and venues to talk around how they create fan experience using technology as the tool. And as we've seen, most of the interactions that go on in a venue these days, when you're interacting with a fan, it's a technology interaction. So how do we make that better, not only from the employee experience, but from the fan experience side of it? So I was introduced to SEAT. I worked on the team side for the Utah Jazz for 12 years. And I oversaw the arena renovation that we did of Vivint Smart Home Arena, which is now the Delta Center. We did that renovation in 2017. And at that point in time, there was only one other pro sports franchise in Salt Lake, and that was Real Salt Lake, and that was an outdoor stadium. And most of the universities were a little bit behind where we were at from a technology perspective. So I was actually looking for kind of guidance on what we should be looking at when we do this renovation. And so I was actually pointed over to SEAT that I should go and attend that because of the community around there. So what we try and do, and that is exactly what I experienced, and that was find a community of people who can be helpful to you in your path, so that lessons learned or any of the pitfalls that you might bump into, we might be able to help you overcome those or find a path forward for what you're trying to work on. And so what we're bringing together in Nashville is really a conversation around how do we help people with the things that are relevant to them in the moment. So we try and present scalable technology solutions. We want people to be able to walk away from the conference with something actionable, so that when they get back to their place, they have something that they can actually work and do, and not just say that was really cool to see.
Yeah, I do a lot of work, obviously, in the area of the cross section of tech and sports, and it always surprised me in venues how varied the differences are from venue to venue. I think perhaps the Intuit Dome might be the most teched out arena I've ever seen. Now, obviously, these things come and go in waves, but then you'll see some new facilities built that don't have a lot of the things. And when I talk to the CIOs, I mean, there's so many vendors now that participate in trying to deliver tech to sports. It's impossible to keep up with. And so, I feel bad for those people because they're so overwhelmed. Now, I know the SEAT conference has evolved quite a bit, right, over the last years. And what are in fact, I think for a while there was some even question about the viability of the event. And so how have you changed things, and how is this different from, perhaps people that attended in years past, but not recently?
Yeah. Well, first of all, Christine did a fantastic job with getting this started through it and the evolution, like I said, from this user group to the conference that we knew pre-COVID. But where I've picked up now, since it's been under my stewardship since the summer of 22, where I've wanted to go with this is I recognize that a change happened within technology in the industry, where I remember, I mean, even just calls leading up to when we were working from home in COVID, around how technology was interacting in the building, meaning that the IT department was the one who was kind of the librarian and curating everything and making sure it was good, to, while we're in midstream of COVID, now the marketing departments are rolling out technology like chatbots as fast as they can. And the data and BI groups are pulling SaaS solutions into their thing. And it's an effort to help their tool set be more effective for them. But at the same time, that also meant that the kind of the technology life cycle that had been managed before now was kind of broken. So where I'm coming in at this from is an effort to try and help them communicate better internally, making sure that the IT department and the marketing team and the data and analytics groups are all working towards common goals internally. And you brought up like the Intuit Dome, and we actually went to that game together
Yeah.
in April there. And some of the things that are I think show off really well in the Intuit Dome is the convergence of all of these groups working together, and the facilities group understanding what the marketing group's trying to achieve, the data analytics group trying to understand what the IT group has capabilities around. And that I really feel like is where we need to kind of start to get lessons learned around how to do this better for the industry in and of itself. And I feel like at the moment in time that we're in, this is where SEAT needed to adapt to address those concerns. So some of the things that I'm working on specifically are democratizing the content that we have presented, and that is I don't do paid speaking sessions in our content. Our content is done from the steering committees, and I will put the caveat in there that track sponsorships come with a speaking opportunity. But again, I want the industry to understand that where SEAT is coming in is our steering committee members are members of these teams and venues, and they're coming in with a perspective of what is needed from a boots on the ground perspective. So that's where we're trying to approach SEAT is coming at it from the standpoint of we recognize what people are up against. They're being asked to do more with less all the time. And so we want to provide content to them that will get them excited, that will help them in what they're doing. And some of the things that, you've obviously seen in our industries, we're really good at copy and paste. So we kind of wait for a team to get ahead, like the Clippers in the Intuit Dome. And then we have everybody else who wants to just go in and kind of copy and paste what has been done, which is not a bad thing. But at the same time, too, there has to be a recognition of the tech stack is different between each organization. So how do we help them find what will fit best within their organization with their tech stack to help them kind of move that thing forward? So Seed is really trying to come in to be helpful from that perspective. And that's one of the beauties of the community of Seed is we have so many good people who are willing to help other people along their journey. It makes it an easy conversation at that point in time.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that you're doing that's really important, frankly, is helping them think of it as a tech stack and not a series of disconnected tech. And one of the things that I took away from the Intuit Dome, is their whole ability to converge the technology. And so the same, ID that I sign up with to be able to enter the stadium, I can use to buy things like that. Because often you'll see these things be disjointed. And so for me to be able to enjoy a fan from a tech perspective, I need to have multiple logins on multiple different IDs, and different apps and things like that. And then from a fan perspective, while the intention was good, it actually has the opposite effect where it winds up being frustrating and you don't use the tech, right? And so I do think it's important that way.
Yeah.
Now, I did notice that on the website, you have really 4 main tracks, correct? And can you talk about those and why you've organized it that way?
Yeah. So 3 of those are kind of the ones that were original when I started attending, and that's the venue tech and security track. The what was called digital marketing, I've now rebranded to digital sponsorship and ticketing. And that is specifically so that we can have good conversations around how to drive revenue with technology. That goes into, again, what I'm trying to change in technology is not your cost center, it's your revenue driver. So the conversations we have in there are specifically around that. Then the data and BI track was the other one. And so those 3 tracks were the ones that kind of always existed there. And in this last event in Las Vegas, I introduced this new track, which is fan experience. And it's because there's so much overlap now between each of these groups that it's hard to go and have a conversation in data and BI when you don't have the ticketing people in there or you don't have your infrastructure group in there. So fan experience is a track where we're trying to bring together content where if you want the member of the IT team in there, if you want your marketing person, your analyst person, your partnership group, they can sit in the same room and see a fully built fan experience that we kind of want to show off. So like one of the groups that we're doing in there is we have Clemson coming in to talk around their hosting of the Savannah Bananas. So when we talk fan experience right now, most conversations, there's always something thrown in around Savannah Bananas. They do a lot of stuff really right. So from that perspective, how do we help the people in our industry who are trying to do some of those things? That's where we can come in this fan experience and try and show how each of these roles fits into building that as a puzzle piece. And that's where those tracks hopefully will be something that are helpful to these folks and give them that actionable content that they can take away.
Yeah, I think one of the things that the Savannah Bananas do well, same with the old Harlem Globetrotters team, they interact with the fans, right? Yeah. And so if you're looking, like you just look at, kids at an event, if they just simply get an autograph, right? They're a fan for life then, right? And just those small amounts of interaction do lead to a lot of loyalty. And so I can understand how, from a fan experience perspective, it's not a static thing that, you try and deliver. It's like a kind of a living entity that's constantly got to be evolving and there's so many ways to interact too, digital, through the digital means. And so now
one of the things to your point on that, I like to try and get people to talk about their building as a verb. Like, what does your building look like in motion? And it's to what you just brought up there. What we should be in the business of are creating what I call are these I was there moments. With the Intuit Dome, they had that screen that you could walk up to, and it would, individualize the message for each person that was standing in front of it, which it gives you that thing of I was there. Because when you go to the school the next day or you're at work and you have that conversation, that has always been, oh, I was at the Intuit Dome last night and they did this, or I was there for that play. And that's what fuels this fandom, are creating these experiences that way. And we don't want them to be, going in and saying, well, yeah, the food wasn't that great and, our team lost, but, all these other types of things. So how do we bridge those gaps? And that's where it's that building in motion type of thing.
Yeah, and actually, I think for the sports, CIOs and the teams in general, I think there's a really important understanding of this. And I've had this conversation with, Daniel Brusilowski with the Warriors and Andrew McIntyre's with Tampa, and most recently with, with Ray at Petco Park. It's easy to have a great fan experience when you're winning, right? But it's that stadium experience that can keep people coming back when you're not winning, because all teams go through ebbs and flows. Yep. And so, when you're winning, that takes care of a lot of problems, right? Yeah. But when you're not so good, trying to get people back in there. In fact, Ray Chan with the Padres said they try and deliver a World Series type experience all the time in hopes that when the team's not doing so well, they'll come back. And so that's an important part. Now, you mentioned the sponsors of the tracks. They get a speaking slot, and so I've always felt sponsors are a big part of these events, right? I know sometimes they're a little in your face, but they're really the ones that fund a lot of the stuff and put together a lot of the content. And so who are the primary sponsors of SEAT this year?
Yeah, so when we announced our Nashville event, one of the very first interactions that I had was from JMA Wireless, who was the title sponsor for the Las Vegas event. And that, from my perspective, was reassuring because it shows that we're doing some things as well that JMA feels are valuable to the industry in and of itself. So it was great to be able to work with them again. And then we've had American Tower reach out. They are actually our sponsor for our evening event on the very first night, which is what we call the family reunion, when everybody gets back together for the first time, after a year. So fantastic to work with Charles and team over there as well. Again, these groups have seen the vision of where I want to go with SEAT. And I often say I want it to be a conference that's not a conference, and it fits really well into the networking piece of this, and that's where it's valuable. And then our friend Brian Bedford and Cisco came in for our first night that we have at the evening event conference of the conference, and that's at Geodis Park with Nashville SC and Cisco. And then our last evening event that we have attached to the hotel that we're going to be at is the Country Music Hall of Fame. And that event is actually hosted by a charity that my wife and I started last year specifically to raise money to get accessible technology into the hands of people who need it. So hearing aids, caption glasses, any of those tools that will help them integrate better into society. And then the sponsors that we have for that in supporting that have been fantastic. And that's the Country Music Association, Uniguest, AmpThink, and Peerless AV have all wanted to be a part of what we're doing with that. So it obviously helps out immensely to have individuals who want to be able to help support what we're trying to do, and they've been fantastic. And then we've got a long list of exhibitors that are involved as well that we may not have time to go through. But again, all these folks that see I'm trying to do things a little bit different than how other conferences are approaching things. And I feel like they've caught the vision of it and want to be involved that way. So
that's good. Now, the other part, of course, of events, since you said a lot of the content is curated for the event, you must have some great keynote speakers. Who are the any notable speakers you'd like to give a shout out to?
yeah, a lot of the ones that we're working on are industry peer professionals that we have. So Charles Curran is actually going to be doing a fireside chat with David Kells, who's the chief venue officer for Bridgestone Arena, which is obviously known as one of the best arenas in North America, with not only the events they have, but what they're doing from the actual experience in there. So we're excited about that one. One of the cool ones that I'm really excited for is we're bringing in what we call the seat OGs. So these are technologists who've been from the team side for a long period of time. And this is Steve Reese, Katie Lepoff, Todd Kaflish. And my intention with this kind of panel session is we bring these folks in to talk about how they've seen technology and the need to adapt to what technology looks like in your venues. Steve Reese, for instance, I mean, he's one of the original technologists. He started in 1990 with the Houston Oilers. So we're talking pre-internet, and now we're in the world where AI tools are, becoming commonplace in pretty much every vertical that we have internal to a team. And so what that kind of conversation is going to revolve around is that need to be uncomfortable and push yourself. I brought up the copy and paste. So how do you push your organization forward in a place where there's some unknowns, and what that ends up doing? And again, going back to the Intuit Dome, I feel like George Hanna came in and brought some things from Disney and the perspective of what we would kind of consider outside the industry of sports, and was a little bit uncomfortable in what that looked like inside of sports. And the success that they've been able to see and the lessons learned from that have pushed the industry forward. And now we actually have something that other teams and venues can look at, and maybe not to the scale and grandeur that Intuit Dome was, but it pushes them into that spot. So those are the types of things that we want out of that session with Steve, Katie, and Todd, are how as an industry we need to constantly be evolving, because technology is constantly evolving. And again, technology interactions are what really do create this fan experience. So those are kind of the most prominent ones. We also have the Country Music Association that I brought in. They're actually going to bring in some people from labels that represent musicians, from the industry itself, around how they do the awards, to talk about the data and analytics that they're pulling and how that parallels to what that is in sports, being that a musician is often like the athlete on a team, and the music industry has a lot of information around the musician. Sports, not so much around the athlete. So what are those things that we can go in and learn? Because they're doing the same type of thing that we're doing in sports. They're just doing it a little bit more granular. So I feel like there's some great conversations to be had in that as well.
Yeah, good. And that outside in perspective, I do know that George came from outside the industry. If you remember, Brian Shield went from Weather Channel to Red Sox, and of course, Weather Channel renowned for the amount of data that they collect, right? And so I think sometimes these sports teams don't really understand the amount of data that they have on hand, or at least they're starting to now. And some of the interesting things you can do with it. In fact, I know like 5-6 years ago, a lot of teams still didn't even have CRM systems, right? You just if you have a captive fan base, then maybe you think you don't need it, but you can do a lot more with it. So,
well, and to your point on that as well, that's really what George introduced into this as well. Is for years we've known who purchases the ticket, we know the guy who's, the 55-year-old white
Yeah.
guy who's bought a ticket, on average or whatever. But really, where it's gone with the Intuit Dome is now you intimately know who each of these people are because you see who they are, you see what they're, how they move about your building, what they're purchasing, all that type of stuff. So you're getting better data because you understand who your fans are better than ever before, which is fantastic.
Yeah. In fact, one of the things that he said that I thought was I hadn't actually considered is when you've got that 55-year-old white guy that buys 4 season tickets, you know him, but you don't know his wife and his two
Who's
kids
with
that
them?
come
Yep.
with him, right? And their habits and who they're fans of, things like that. So his goal was to know every fan. And if you think about the way Disney operates, it's certainly to know every person that walks through those gates. And
Yep.
they perhaps do it better than anybody. So
Yeah.
now, from a topical perspective, obviously everyone's going to want to talk about AI, right? So let's put that aside. Other than, well, talk about it if you want, but I'm just, what are some of the key technology themes that you see permeating across the industry?
Yeah, there will obviously be conversation around AI. Its impact, while acute in this moment in time, has been around for a long time. So machine learning and all that, teams have been using that for years to help in their decisions on who they market to for their season tickets or whatever. But the tool sets are becoming more accessible now. So we're going to have conversations obviously around each of those. Some of the conversations that we're developing. We've got wayfinding, smart navigation conversations. We've got smart IoT devices in venues and how to gain better clarity around those. We have smart venue management with new tools that are available that can help people have a better understanding of not only what's happening in your building, but who the fans that it's affecting are, and having conversations with them there. We've got content around fan journey mapping to really gain a better understanding around how to interact with your fan base wherever they are in their moment in time. And then marketing as well to people who don't normally fit into that normal bucket there. And what I'm referring to is around accessibility. So we've actually got a session specifically around accessibility and how to improve your hearing systems that you have inside of your venues for those who are hearing and visually impaired. So a lot of the content that, like I said, as well, is geared towards these actionable items that people can take in this. Our data and BI is actually going to be really exciting. We've actually got some content coming around specifically for the Intuit Dome with one of the partners that we have in that one. So yeah, there's a lot of content that's actually going to be really cool to be involved in just listening on it because again, you're going to gain a perspective. There's actually one that I feel like it's an outlier, but we're bringing in the Houston Livestock and Rodeo, which is the largest event in North America. There's almost 3 million people that walk through the
Wow.
turnstiles for that 20-day event. And there's shopping, there's a livestock show, there's rodeo, there's a concert, there's all of these kind of entertainment district components to it, but they're doing it all together in this one thing. And speaking with the women who actually run the marketing and all of the other stuff, it's a fascinating kind of subject to go in and listen to. So we're bringing in some things like that to talk through people that are having some successes in those places and the honest conversations around where people are having pitfalls and how they got over the obstacles in that.
Yeah, some of the other enabling technologies like the glasses that track and things like that, identify objects. I got quite a heavy dose of that this year at the CES show, the Consumer Electronics Show, where you could wear a pair of glasses, you'd look at a table, and it would tell you that there's a book and an apple on the table. And I started thinking about, well, why couldn't you use that to tell me that's a basketball and it's, going this
Yeah.
fast or something like that, right? Help people, hear better, see better, things like that. So, boy, there's a lot of stuff coming. So, all right. Well, it sounds like it's going to be a packed event. If people want to find out about it, the URL is
www.zconference.com.
okay, and I'll include a link to the description below. And I'm looking forward to seeing it. So I'm going to be there as well. And this will be my first seat, and I'm excited about the content and catching up with what's the latest and greatest in sports and entertainment technology. But for people out there that aren't in this industry, I do want to say that a lot of what you see in sports and entertainment does apply to general enterprise as well. It's just it's used in a different way. But I've seen a lot of the technology overlap. So especially when you get down to the enabling infrastructure. So
Absolutely.
yeah. Anything else you want to add, Josh?
No, just I would like to extend an invitation to everybody to come and be a part of this as well. For those who are maybe at a position in their career where they don't feel like this is valuable to them anymore, there are people below you who need this help in their journey as well, and this would be an opportunity for them to get together, network, and be able to learn those things. So I encourage you to invite those who might be your subordinates in your organizations to be able to come and be a part of this. The best part about it is a community. And some of these people have been now made lifelong friends of mine just because of participating there. And that's the great part about our industry is we have fantastic people who are always willing to help other folks on their journey. And so Seed is a great place for us all to get together and kind of become friends again.
Yeah, and well, because it is cut and paste, you sort of say that tongue in cheek, but you do learn. I think what's important is the lessons learned. I know when I talked to Bill Schlau from the Giants about a lot of the tech in the ballpark, he rattled off Phillies and Warriors, team after team after team that had deployed the technology before him, understood how the lessons learned, and they were able to apply it. So you're right; it is a very tight knit community that I think really, it's interesting. These teams compete on the field, but behind the scenes, that's really an all for one for all, because when one's successful, everyone's successful. So
yeah, and honestly, that was what we used to describe all the time when people had asked why we were doing what we're doing. It was like, I can be friends with the Warriors because I don't compete with them in any aspect other than the teams playing on the court. So it behooves us to work with each other because we're both trying to solve the same problems.
yeah.
We're just totally different markets. So it really does help to have people who are in the same boat as you, kind of sailing through the same storm.
Yeah. Although as a person in Boston, it would be hard for me to support anything in New York. So let's leave it at that. So, all right, Josh, I appreciate your time.
Hey,
So on
thank you.
behalf of Josh Barney, CEO of the Seek Conference, I'm Zias Caravallo from ZK Research, and thanks for watching. I will include the link to the event below. Thanks for your time, Josh. Give us a like and hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you next time on the next episode of ZKast.